You are currently inhabiting a biological state of metabolic illiteracy, and it is the primary reason your strategic capital is undergoing a process of terminal evaporation. You believe that accounting is a boring administrative function related to taxes and spreadsheets. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, accounting is the ultimate audit of power. It is the cold, clinical measurement of how much life force you are trading for symbolic tokens. The system taught you math so you could count their money, not so you could measure your sovereignty. You are currently balancing the books for the hierarchy, while the environment is preparing to liquidate your time asset. We are now prisecting the biology of sovereign accounting, showing you why your financial plan is a blueprint for slavery and how the apex predator utilizes metabolic sequestration to move from the frequency of the taxpayer to the frequency of the governor of the realm. You are currently counting the cost, and the matrix is preparing to seize the ledger. The human nervous system is equipped with an ancestral evaluation circuit optimized for a landscape where every expenditure of energy had to result in a caloric profit. To the ancient brain, accounting was life or death. Did the energy spent hunting the mammoth exceed the energy gained from eating it? However, the matrix has performed a neural hijack on this circuit. It has replaced caloric profit with fiat accumulation. They have trained you to feel rich when the number in your bank account goes up, even if the time remaining in your biological existence is crashing down. This is biological gaslighting. When you work a 9 to 5 to pay off a mortgage on a depreciating asset, you are running a negative metabolic deficit. You are burning apex energy to acquire synthetic comfort. The sovereign man understands that a full bank account with an empty soul is a failed audit. He seeks zero entropy dominance. He refuses to trade his primary kinetic force for secondary paper. Consider the physics of the true ledger. In the persistence hunt, the only currency that matters is time and energy. Every other metric is a distraction. The standard accountant measures your net worth in dollars. The sovereign accountant measures his metabolic net worth in free hours and territorial control. The matrix wants you to focus on the tax bill so you don't notice the life tax, the 60 hours a week they extract from you just to keep you sitting in their cage. The sovereign predator understands energy inertia. He does not spend his time. He invests his life force into substrate. He converts his metabolic activity into automated systems, physical assets, and informational leverage that generate yield without his continued presence. He understands that any income that requires your daily sweat is a debt you owe to the system. He is moving his accounting from the volatility of the salary to the stability of the tribute. The architecture of the sovereign accountant requires you to move from external compliance to internal governance. Most of you are still thinking in terms of, how do I minimize my taxes? This is a slave protocol. The sovereign thinks in terms of, how do I maximize my sovereignty? He utilizes the fluidity of the digital hunt to fuel the solidness of the physical garrison. For those ready to move from the metabolic waste of the consumer trap to the high voltage sovereignty of the hunter, the protocol 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated digital empires. This is the tactical fulcrum. You utilize the AI machine to generate the flow, the constant stream of digital calories, and you use that flow to buy back your time sovereignty. You are not accounting for the IRS. You are auditing your freedom. You use the automated yield to pay the metabolic cost of your existence, ensuring that your primary force is never allocated to low-value tasks. You are moving from the frequency of the clerk to the frequency of the auditor. We must observe the neurochemistry of the final tally. For millions of years, the primary indicator of apex status was not how much you had, but how little you had to do to survive. When an organism owns its territory and its energy vents, its brain activates a sovereign circuitry that is dormant in the employee. This circuitry provides a level of internal stillness and strategic clarity that cannot be simulated by a high salary. The world can smell the audit on you because your nervous system is broadcasting the anxiety of the debtor. But the man who has balanced his own ledger, backed by automated yield and zero reliance on the hierarchy, radiates the stability of the judge. He is solvent. He is unauditable. This hierarchical mass is what generates the natural authority that forces the environment to yield. He has secured the core, and from that core, he projects asymmetric force into the rest of the world. He has moved from the surface number to the sovereignty of the source. The entropy of the standard audit is the final cage. The giants want you to believe that accounting is about following the rules. No, accounting is about knowing the score. If you do not know the true cost of your lifestyle in terms of your own life force, you are already bankrupt. This is biological sabotage. The apex predator seeks the isolation of the ledger. He builds a perimeter filter around his time and energy. He decides what expenditure is allowed to cross his threshold. He has achieved metabolic sovereignty. He is the censor of his own resources, and his internal law is the only accounting standard that matters. He is not calculating for a world he doesn't control. He is measuring a world he owns. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the taxpayer to the vertical axis of the sovereign accountant. You must stop counting money and start accounting for power. The hunt is not a financial game. It is a specific target acquisition of the time and territory that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the asset that is being depreciated by the system, or the auditor who is liquidating the system for your own gain? The primal code is not about saving taxes. It is about temporal dominance. Find the coordinate where you can stand in the informational silence of your own empire and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your life leaks, and begin the final calculation of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the compliant, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop paying attention and start auditing reality. We must now bisect the specific architecture of the predator's balance sheet and the terminal pathology of the domesticated liability. You believe that an asset is anything you own that has a market value, and a liability is a loan you owe to a bank. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the definitions are clinical and binary. An asset is a force multiplier that generates autonomy without your continued metabolic presence, while a liability is a metabolic sink that requires your constant life force to maintain its existence. You are currently accumulating possessions that are actually biological parasites, draining your voltage and tethering you to the hierarchy's grid. While you are busy managing your portfolio, the apex predator is busy liquidating his friction. He understands that in the predatory landscape of 2026, the only true profit is the one that provides temporal velocity. You are currently asset-rich and freedom-broke, and the environment is preparing to audit your mobility. Consider the biology of the status sink. The matrix has trained you to mislabel your home, your luxury vehicle, and your designer wardrobe as assets. This is strategic sabotage. From a sovereign perspective, these are high-maintenance liabilities. They require maintenance energy, insurance energy, tax energy, and most importantly, they require you to stay in a fixed coordinate to service the debt or the upkeep. They are the golden handcuffs of the domesticated organism. Every dollar spent on an object that does not produce its own energy is a dollar you have subtracted from your apex reserve. You are decorating your cage while the sovereign is buying the key. The sovereign accountant performs a clinical purge of friction. He asks, does this object provide me with more force, or does it demand more of my time? If the answer is the latter, it is a liability, and it is slated for biological liquidation. The architecture of the apex asset requires a transition from static value to kinetic yield. Most of you are still thinking in terms of appreciation. You hope the price of your house goes up so you can sell it to a bigger scavenger later. This is a slave protocol. The sovereign thinks in terms of systemic autonomy. The scavenger's balance sheet contains cars, primary residences, consumer debt, and savings that are being dissolved by inflation. It is a document of dependency. The sovereign's balance sheet contains automated digital systems, hard substrate land, energy production, and informational leverage. It is a document of dominance. The sovereign predator seeks passive force. He wants to own the energy vents, the systems that capture the attention and the resources of the swarm, and convert them into a metabolic surplus that fuels his garrison. He understands that the only safe asset is the one that the matrix cannot audit or reset without destroying its own infrastructure. He chooses the boredom of the system over the theater of the luxury. We must analyze the neurochemistry of debt dependency. Financial debt is not a numbers game. It is a neurological shackle. When you owe the hierarchy a monthly tribute, your brain remains in a state of chronic sympathetic arousal. Your amygdala is perpetually scanning for threats to your income because failure means the loss of your domesticated comfort. This state of survival anxiety inhibits the prefrontal cortex, preventing you from ever planning beyond the next payment cycle. This is biological domestication. You cannot think like an ancestor because you are too busy reacting like a prey organism. The sovereign accountant prioritizes zero-debt sovereignty. He understands that his patience and his aggression are only possible when he has no metabolic leakage to the banks. He clears the deck of small debts to gain the large advantage. For those ready to move from the metabolic waste of the debt trap to the high-voltage sovereignty of the auditor, the protocol Machiavelli 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated digital empires. This is the tactical fulcrum. You utilize the AI machine to build apex assets, systems that function in the digital abyss while you sleep. This automated flow is what provides the hormonal floor required to maintain a low time preference. When your survival is not dependent on your daily sweat, you gain the coldness to identify the generational entry. You use the flow to buy the hard matter, the land, the stone, and the infrastructure that cannot be liquidated by a bank click. By the time the unevolved realize that their portfolio is merely digital dust, the sovereign has already sequestered his life force into positions of zero-risk dominance. The entropy of the net worth metric is the final cage. The giants want you to focus on your net worth because it is a static signal of past effort. The sovereign accountant focuses on his force velocity, the rate at which his assets generate new autonomy. In the standard matrix, you are taught to save for retirement. This is an admission of biological defeat. It implies that you are waiting for your expiration date to finally be free. The apex predator seeks immediate sovereignty. He wants to reach the coordinate where his automated yield exceeds his metabolic cost now. This is the point of infinite leverage. Once reached, every second of his life is unleashed from the system. He has achieved temporal dominance. He is the judge of his own time, and his internal law is the only accounting standard that matters. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the consumer to the vertical axis of the sovereign auditor. You must stop buying things and start acquiring force. The hunt is not a social experiment. It is a specific target acquisition of the time and territory that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the debtor who is being milked by the hierarchy, or the sovereign accountant who is liquidating his liabilities to fund his own empire? The primal code is not about saving money. It is about sequestrating reality. Find the coordinate where you can fix your value in matter and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your status leaks, and begin the final calculation of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the fragile, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop owning things that own you and start annexing your power. We must now presect the specific pathology of fiscal parasitism and the clinical reality of the energy siphon. You believe that taxes are a social contract for infrastructure and that inflation is an accidental byproduct of economic growth. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, these are not policies, they are biological predation. They are the methods by which the matrix scavengers perform a high-frequency extraction of your caloric surplus without ever engaging in the hunt themselves. You are currently earning a living while the hierarchy is busy recycling your pulse. While you are counting your gross income, the sovereign accountant is busy hardening his perimeter. He understands that in the predatory landscape of 2026, any energy stored within the hierarchy's grid is energy that is slated for systemic evaporation. You are currently bleeding voltage, and the environment is preparing to ground your potential. Consider the biology of the thermal leak. In the wild, an organism that cannot insulate itself against the environment loses its metabolic heat and dies. In the financial matrix, inflation is the cold. It is the constant, invisible drop in the caloric density of your currency. Every year you hold fiat, your stored energy becomes less potent. You are carrying a kill that is rotting in your hands. This is strategic sabotage. By devaluing the currency, the giants ensure that you can never accumulate enough thermal mass to survive a winter without them. They keep you in a state of perpetual urgency, forced to hunt harder every year just to maintain the same level of survival. The sovereign accountant refuses to hold rotting meat. He performs a matter shift, converting his liquid energy into non-debussable substrate, assets whose value is tied to the laws of physics, not the whims of the hive. The architecture of the fiscal shield requires a transition from compliance to metabolic insulation. Most of you are transparent to the state. Your income is tracked, your spending is monitored, and your energy vents are wide open for extraction. You are the ideal prey. The scavenger's strategy works for taxable income, keeps wealth in auditable accounts, and hopes for refunds. He is a hormonal subject. The sovereign strategy focuses on capital expansion, utilizes informational opacity, and sequesters force in jurisdictional silence. He is a predatory ghost. The sovereign predator understands that the taxman is a biological parasite that targets the prime cuts of your effort. To survive, the sovereign creates complex perimeters. He utilizes corporate structures, digital enclaves, and physical hard points to ensure that the hive only sees what he allows it to see. He understands that visibility is a liability. He achieves fiscal stillness by ensuring his yield is generated in the shadows of the code and and sequestered in the weight of the stone. We must analyze the neurochemistry of tax submission. When you look at your net pay and feel a sense of inevitability about the extraction, your brain is broadcasting a signal of domesticated defeat. You have accepted that a portion of your life force belongs to a higher authority. This acceptance creates a neurological ceiling on your ambition. You stop hunting for the dynasty and start hunting for the hive. The sovereign accountant maintains hormonal sovereignty. He views every dollar extracted by the matrix as a biological strike against his bloodline. This predatory clarity drives him to find the bypass coordinates, the legal and technical niches where his energy can flow without friction. He does not pay his dues. He defends his reserves. For those ready to move from the metabolic waste of the tax trap to the high-voltage sovereignty of the auditor, the Protocol 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated digital empires. This is the tactical fulcrum. You utilize the AI machine to build high-velocity yield vents that operate outside the traditional labor contract. This automated flow allows you to decouple your survival from reportable sweat. You use the flow to fund your energy shield, buying the land, the gold, and the systems that the inflation predator cannot touch. By the time the unevolved realize that their savings have been dissolved into digital dust, the sovereign has already sequestered his life force into positions of total geometric security. The entropy of the social contract narrative is the final cage. The giants want you to believe that paying your fair share is a moral virtue. No, in the persistence hunt, giving away your calories is a death sentence. The sovereign accountant focuses on generational solvency. He understands that his primary moral obligation is to the integrity of his own bloodline, not the appetite of the scavenger state. He reaches a point of atmospheric sovereignty where he provides his own infrastructure, his own security, his own energy, his own information. He is no longer a user of the hive. He is the architect of his own reality. He has achieved temporal independence. He is the judge of his own tribute, and his internal law is the only accounting standard that survives the reset. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the taxpayer to the vertical axis of the sovereign auditor. You must stop reporting your pulse and start garrisoning your yield. The hunt is not a social parade. It is a specific target acquisition of the energy and autonomy that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the host that is being drained by the hive, or the sovereign accountant who is insulating his core to fund his own empire? The primal code is not about accounting tricks. It is about biological survival. Find the coordinate where the hive cannot reach and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your extraction leaks, and begin the final calculation of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the transparent, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop feeding the matrix and start fueling the dynasty. We must now presect the specific pathology of social entropy and the clinical reality of the network liability. You believe that your friends, your social circle, and your professional network are emotional assets that provide you with support and community. This is a terminal civilizational hallucination. In the raw, unyielding arena of the persistence hunt, the tribe is not a social club. It is a metabolic ledger. Every organism in your proximity is either a force multiplier that enhances your territorial annexation or a social parasite that siphons your focus, your time, and your caloric reserves. You are currently maintaining relationships while the hierarchy is busy auditing your proximity. While you are worried about being liked, the sovereign accountant is busy liquidating his network friction. He understands that in the predatory landscape of 2026, the only true network effect is the one that provides asymmetric leverage. You are currently socially rich and strategically starving, and the environment is preparing to audit your biological alignment. Consider the biology of social grooming. In the wild, primates spend hours grooming each other to maintain tribal cohesion. This is an ancestral survival mechanism designed for a world of physical predators and limited resources. However, the Matrix has performed a neural hijack on this circuit. It has replaced tribal security, digital validation. You are currently burning apex energy on social maintenance, answering low-value texts, attending status parades, weddings, parties, networking events, and managing the emotional volatility of the unevolved. This is strategic sabotage. Every hour spent grooming a liability is an hour you have stolen from your own dynastic construction. The sovereign accountant performs a clinical social audit. He asks, does this proximity increase my output, or does it demand a metabolic subsidy? If the organism requires a subsidy of your time or energy without providing a sovereign yield, it is a social liability, and it is slated for informational liquidation. The architecture of the Apex network requires a transition from horizontal connection to vertical alignment. Most of you are surrounded by horizontal peers, organisms who inhabit the same frequency of compliant mediocrity. They act as biological anchors, ensuring that any attempt you make to ascend the axis is met with social friction, doubt, or tall poppy sabotage. The scavengers network contains friends who complain about the matrix but refuse to exit it, family who demand your presence but ignore your purpose, and colleagues who compete for the crumbs of the hierarchy. It is a document of entropy. The sovereign's network contains strategic allies, automated systems, and informational sentinels. It is a document of force. The sovereign predator seeks network weight. He understands that visibility to the unevolved is a focus leak. He practices strategic obscurity, limiting his proximity to those who possess their own sovereign substrate. He chooses the isolation of the core over the validation of the swarm. We must analyze the neurochemistry of social submission. The human brain is biologically wired to seek group approval because in the primal past, exclusion meant death. The matrix utilizes this exclusion phobia to keep you polite and available to the parasites. When you say yes to a low-value social obligation because you feel guilty, your brain is broadcasting a signal of subordinate status. You have allowed the social law of the swarm to override your internal law. This creates a neurological ceiling on your dominance. You cannot rule your reality if you are still seeking permission from the neighbors. The sovereign accountant prioritizes social solvent psi. He understands that his patience and his strategic clarity are only possible when he has no emotional leakage to the unevolved. He performs a digital perimeter check, muting the noise and clearing the social debt to gain the sovereign advantage. For those ready to move from the metabolic waste of the social hive to the high-voltage sovereignty of the auditor, the protocol 260 provides the clinical architecture for constructing automated digital empires. This is the tactical fulcrum. You utilize the AI machine to build sovereign informants, systems that function as your network in the digital abyss. This automated yield is what provides the hormonal floor required to walk away from the drama economy. When your status is not dependent on social mirrors, you gain the coldness to identify the strategic alliance. You use the flow to buy the hard matter relationships, the ones built on shared annexation rather than shared misery. By the time the unevolved realize that their friendships are merely mutual liquidation pacts, the sovereign has already sequestered his social force into positions of zero-friction dominance. The entropy of the likability metric is the final cage. The giants want you to focus on your social net worth, followers, friends, connections, because it is a vapor signal that provides zero territorial mass. The sovereign accountant focuses on his proximity yield, the rate at which his circle enhances his autonomy. In the standard matrix, you are taught to be a team player. This is an admission of biological submission. It implies that you are a component of someone else's machine. The apex predator seeks atmospheric sovereignty. He wants to reach the coordinate where his network is a filter, not a pipe. He has achieved temporal independence. He is the judge of his own proximity, and his internal law is the only accounting standard that survives the reset. Recognition of this biological requirement is the only way out of the mud. You must move from the horizontal plane of the socialite to the vertical axis of the sovereign auditor. You must stop connecting and start curating. The hunt is not a social experiment. It is a specific target acquisition of the time and the focus that defines your existence. You must decide what you are. Are you the groomer who is being siphoned by the swarm, or the sovereign accountant who is liquidating his social liabilities to fund his own empire? The primal code is not about being nice. It is about biological integrity. Find the coordinate where the swarm cannot reach your focus and put all your metabolic weight on it. Stand up, audit your empathy leaks, and begin the final calculation of your sovereign kingdom. The abyss is waiting for the connected, but the substrate is waiting for the sovereign. Stop maintaining people and start annexing your silence.